Hi, folks. Thank you so much for joining us today. I have the absolute honor of having Dr. Megan Neyer here with us. Megan, welcome to the show. Thank you so much for coming on.
Oh, thank you so much for having me, John. It's a pleasure to be here.
We're going to learn a lot about hopefully your background, how you got here, and you now are a sports performance counselor and you do consulting in that field, and you do some amazing work with the mind of athletes. And I remember when I was talking to you originally, you said you were always a phenomenal diver, right? You were an Olympic diver, and then after that, though, you always enjoyed working with swimmers. So you've really focused a lot on that as well as other sports. We're going to learn all about this. This is great. Thank you for coming.
Thank you.
So the first thing I really want to get to know is what got you started in diving, and how old were you, and what did you do?
Well, I actually was 12 when I started diving. I was originally a gymnast. That's the route a lot of divers take. But before that, I mean, I could swim before I could walk. I was from a swimming family. Everybody in my family swam. I had a brother who went to college on a swimming scholarship. So we grew up. I grew up in the water. I could swim before I could walk, and so it's a very natural environment for me. However, I discovered even in my early swimming career that you guys like wake up too early and work too hard. So um, and that I'm only was ever only going to be 5'2", and my natural gifts were more flipping and twisting. So I was a gymnast for 6 years, and for reasons beyond my control, my coach had to give up the team. And when I was 12 years old, my parents weren't ready to mail me off and have somebody train me in a different city. It just kind of wasn't real common at that point. So I was very fortunate. I took a diving class at the local YMCA, and you talk about marrying up my two loves, spinning and twisting and being in the water. And so diving felt like a very natural thing to me as well. And so I was very fortunate that I had that opportunity to transition into diving. And then my gymnastics history certainly gave me a leg up or a flip forward, as it were.
So what are some of the highlights of your diving career? Because you had amazing accomplishments. I think didn't you go to the University of Florida?
I did. Go Gators.
Wow,
Yeah.
fantastic.
It was the Randy Reese swimming era, and Tracy Calkins was there when I was there. Craig Beardsley. We just had some just incredible talent, and I look back on that time and feel really fortunate to have been a member of that team, and and it was just a great experience to be able to again. I really wanted to optimize that opportunity academically and athletically. I wanted to be a part of an NCAA team that had the potential to win a national championship, because diving, like swimming, when we come up in the club ranks, is kind of an individual thing. Even if you do have club champions for at nationals or whatever, but it's still a very different feel, I think, to be a part of a collegiate team vying for, and at least in my case, an SEC or NCAA championship. And that was really important to me. I wanted to be a contributor at that level.
Wow, and you certainly became one. Holy cow, what success! So you went on right up through there, and tell us about your experience in the Olympics, if you would.
Well, my Olympics experience it wasn't an experience. I was a member of the 1980 Olympic team, the year we boycotted the games. And despite the fact I was fairly young at that time, and of course that was very disappointing. But I assumed I would have another opportunity, and life doesn't always offer you up the same opportunity again. And so, despite making the effort to make the team another couple of times, I never fulfilled my uh, my dream of competing the Olympics. And so, while there was some pretty wild success in there in terms of national championships and NCAA championships, and I was a world champion, there were some low lights too, as well, to my career. And I think anybody who has a 14-year career goes through the highlights and lowlights. I mean, you can certainly see that as evidenced by Michael Phelps and Ryan Lochte and
Right.
Tracy Calkins. When I have just great affinity for Tracy Calkins, just a very dear person, and still to me one of the most beautiful, capable swimmers I've ever seen in my life, and as evidenced
An
by her.
amazing
Yeah,
person.
I mean, I mean, how lucky was I that I got to be on this team? At my club team in diving, I was with Greg Louganis, and then in my collegiate team, I'm with Tracy Calkins. So two of the absolute icons and legends in their respective sports. And so I was just felt super lucky. And I think one of the reasons I love working with swimmers is because I had the benefit of, I was out at Mission Viejo, and so I was with that whole cadre of incredible swimmers and Jesse Visayo and that whole set of folks, and just really had the opportunity, and quite frankly, honestly, dated swimmers, and so I got to know a lot about
Huge
swimming
part of your
mentality
life.
and
Yeah.
time and times, and it was weird because I always dated like IMers and distance swimmers, and I'm like, I couldn't do that if you paid me, right? I mean, I'm like, I can swim one stroke of fly and I'm done. And so I just got very, very interested in the psyche of the swimming mind. And so, and I got to and I got to watch the literal legends in the sport do what they do and have opportunities. And I was sort of insanely curious. And so had the opportunity to sit down and talk to them, and they would sort of tolerate all my questions and be very nice to me when they're like going, who is this diver chick, and why does she care about swimming? But they were we had a really great camaraderie at University of Florida. I mean, I still am very connected to the program, and just feel very lucky to have had that opportunity.
Right. And that's something that's been coming up lately about the possibility of some countries boycotting another Olympics coming up, possibly too, with China hosting them and things like this. And I just like that because I've interviewed so many folks from the 1980 Olympics, and please, I can see the head shaking. It's a lifetime of pain, isn't it? In some ways,
Um,
for some people at least.
Well, it's certainly a lifetime of reflection. It's now been 41 years since the boycott of the 1980 Olympics, and John, I've thought about it a thousand different ways and done 100 different interviews, and it was different for me. My perspective on it in 84 was very different because in 84, when I just barely missed the team and I was the reigning world champion and expected to go to Los Angeles, win the gold medal for the United States. And I just felt like I let everybody, certainly in this country, down. Felt like I let my coach down. I felt like I certainly let myself down. And so it's pretty devastating. So in 84 it was extremely painful, and then it just took on different iterations over the years and different reflections and gaining more understanding and knowledge of how it all evolved. But my conclusion is ultimately that you just that I believe that international sport can save the world. And when you start inserting politics, we're never going to be devoid of politics. I think that's unrealistic. I don't think we're ever going to be devoid of nationality. I mean, we all wave the American flag and feel very proud of that when we're on the podium. But the world, my international diving experiences, people across the world are all quite similar fundamentally in terms of what we want. And I've gotten to know people in China and then East Germany and then the USSR and Russia and all over the world, and Australia and New Zealand and some of my best friends, and the world is quite small, and when you put all those people together, they find the commonality and they become lifelong friends, and the world becomes incredibly small. And to boycott out of some opinion politically, the people it hurts most are the athletes.
Right.
And the athletes want to go. I
and those
Love the
families that are
challenges.
supporting them, right, from an emotional standpoint, the impact on the parents of the athletes, right? It's just, I have to say that that's been reflected in every interview from everyone from, right, we've done these amazing interviews all over the world. And I think one of the things that we'd like to bring light to is that the amount of suffering, you put it, and the long term, right, is really housed with the athlete and their families. You know, the world moves forward, but that athlete gets caught with that, right, and what that difficult situation. And I think everyone has reflected that same opinion of, you know, don't let politics get into and interrupt the really important things of life that are happening around you.
I think it's not just the important things in life because it's important to us and it's important to our parents and it's important in our relative world. But when I say I believe international sport can save the world, I genuinely believe that. We're never going to save the world by sending people across borders with weapons. We just continue to destroy it. But you put these people together that don't speak the same language but somehow find a common language through their sport and become lifelong friends. I mean, think about the reason that we got past the Iron Curtain was predicated on ping pong diplomacy, an American athlete befriending a Chinese athlete and winding up in a meeting with Mao Zedong when he would even speak to Nixon at that point. And so it can be profound, the possibilities when athletes come together with genuine respect for each other's capabilities. And of course I understand there's been cheating and all of this other, there is the dark side of sport, but fundamentally the two things I genuinely believe about sport is it teaches you great life skills and it can bring the world together.
That's really neat. I love that. So how did your experience in diving, and I think you're telling us a little bit about this now, but how did your experience in diving impact your future career?
Well, again, I believe that all sports can teach us great life skills, and that's every athlete that I work with. I'm talking about that. You're gonna, you fundamentally learn goals and energy management and time management, and understanding what your priorities are, and putting your energy behind those priorities, and having successes, and having times when you don't meet your objectives, and learning how to be coached and learning how to navigate relationships and learning how to be a part of a team, a part of a greater good. And so learning how to be organized and mindful and thoughtful and how to take feedback, and the list goes on. And in every single case learning this thing about being resilient and learning about grief. I mean,
Mm.
um, uh, grief is loss and not achieving what we want, or loss, are all a part of life's experiences, and learning how to manage all of those things, learning how to manage success. I mean, success can be certainly overwhelming, and so I think you learn all of those things through sport. And so whether or not you end up with a bunch of gold medals, or the gold medal that you really wanted or thought you were going to get, um, you certainly end every single career with a tremendous amount of skills that enable you to be successful in the future.
Megan, I'm going to ask you something a little bit different to take us through something that most of the people that are watching this have probably never been through. And I'm going to guarantee that most of them haven't. Take us to the world championships with you in that dive if you can. And just, I don't know, did you do the 10-meter platforms as well? Or
I did both 3 and 10 meter, but I didn't at the world championships. I won the world championships on 3 meter springboard. I was much more of a springboard specialist. Um, uh, um, this is probably a funny statement, but I was actually afraid of heights. And you asked my coach, getting me to dive platform was no small challenge. And I only did it for about 5 years of a 14-year career because I was like, yeah, I did it. I made the Olympic team. I was the dumbbell Olympian on three. I won the Olympic trials both on 3 and 10 meter in 1980. And
Wow.
but I was scared to death every day of my life. And one of the reasons I really appreciate that I dove platform is that nothing else has ever scared me that badly the rest of my life.
Okay, so that's what I'm going to ask you then. I don't know if you can take us up on a dive. Did you ever do the handstand at the end there?
No, I never did handstand dives. I managed to successfully avoid those.
I was going to ask you about it. I can't imagine what's going through that mind. So
Yeah.
what I guess what I'm saying is the mental aspect of going into that dive, and there's only one person at that point, right? Like the whole world just watching you. So it's got to be very intense about what's coming up mentally. And what do you focus on when you're going into a dive like that means so much? How do you control the emotion?
Uh, John, we develop things called pre-dive routines. I teach swimmers pre-swim routines. It's everything that you're focused on leading up to when you stand on the end of the diving board or stand on the block or get in the water on the block or for backstroke starts. And I have 3 rules. Rule number 1, energy follows your thoughts. So whatever you're thinking about, your energy follows. Rule number 2, focus on what you do want, not what you don't want. So if I'm standing on the end of the platform and going, oh my God, I don't want to wipe out, guess where my brain is focused on,
You're
and
leading yourself right there, right?
right. That's not a good way to be thinking on the end of a platform. And rule number 3, focus on the process, focus on things you have control over. And so when I'm up on that platform, I hope I'm thinking about, get your arms through and see your spot and kick out tight. And then getting that down to very succinct one word. Because think about how fast a dive is over, even from platform in 1.2 seconds. You better not be thinking about a whole lot or you're going to be screwed. And so you got to keep your thinking very simple, but I think that's true in every sport. I work with a lot of Emery swimmers, and part of that problem with them is they're all really, really intelligent kids, and they're overthinkers.
So they go a lot to the logic side versus to the kind of emotional, just do it side, right? And when you get into a competition like that, right, it really you can logic it out, but you lose that hot mode that makes you the great performer.
You really got to be on automatic pilot, and if you're going to be thinking at all, the thinking has to be very simple, and you want it to be very concrete and behavioral. And what I mean by that is you might think about like breaststrokers might be thinking about like snap or shoot. So in terms of their feet and their hands shooting out in front, or flyers, I have them think about mantras, like particularly to fly, long, strong, long.
Right. So they're like one word packages, right, of information. So they deliver a heavy message through one word, right?
Yeah.
Because as you think through those words and you process them, you go back into logical mode.
Right. It's just keeping that brain and that body in communication with each other, particularly in the part of the race where there's any potential for the stroke starting to break down. You want to think about what you do want to be doing and just communicate with that body part instead of going, oh my God, I'm tired. I know it's very much in the lexicon of swimming to say that, like, I'm worried about dying at the end of a race. Well, even when I know that that's common language, common vernacular in swimming, when you start thinking about dying, your brain doesn't like the concept. And so even though it's so common, I still talk to the swimmers I work with about going, I know that this is really common in the sport, but let's talk about what you do want to be doing and how you gain power, and how you focus on what you do want to have happen instead of backing off because you're afraid of what might happen.
Changing the language that you're using in your internal thought. Is that right?
That's
So your
correct.
self-talk
Mhm.
needs to, right? We always say this, and we're actually building an avatar to do this. We say there's a little secretary down in your subconscious, and they're only, checking off the things you tell it because you're already, filtered it out at this point. So they believe you. And
Mhm.
so if you tell them, hey, I'm going to get that die at the end, yeah, they're just going to report that back. Yeah, you're going to die at the end. If you
Yep.
told, hey, I'm going to win at the end, okay, yeah, you're going to win at the end, right? And so
Sure.
they're just repeating it back,
Mhm.
what you sent it to start with. So self-talk is such a big deal. And the language you use, just like if you're being polite to people and things like, right? The language you use to communicate internally is so big. And to see somebody like you that understands that and can communicate that, and is, your whole life has been in there, would be fantastic for somebody, because they'd understand, like, one word, and right, and really kind of make it succinct for them. That's great. Okay, can you see that okay?
I can.
And these are called the cornerstones of performance. They're actually the cornerstones of athletic performance. So this, for any athlete, these are the different cornerstones of information where you can kind of block off major aspects. One, you have fuels, which is the green girl over here, for sleep, hydration, nutrition, and oxygen. And then you have the energy systems, which we use for in-water training, such as endurance. And this, we're talking about physical endurance, physical speed, and physical explosive motion. Then you go over here and you have, right, you have the strength, the flexibility. So the fuels basically goes through one of those three energy systems, depending on what it is you're doing, the activity, if it's a marathon or if it's, right, a sprint. And then over here, it's going to make the muscle contract, or allow the muscle to contract with that energy. And they're going to contract around the bones, which is your technique, which I can't imagine how important that is to divers, right? The technique, right? And also in swimmers as well. So the technique is, right, how you move that skeletal system, and the technique gets you to where you want to go. And that's what we call the mind, right? And the technique for us is, how you move that skeleton. And the question is, do you know where you want to go and how to get there? And that's kind of our mind aspect. Synergy is you putting it all together. So if you're racing, it's synergistic, it's pulling all these things together. If you're converting it possibly to college, right, your swimming career to college, that would be a different form of synergy. um, Looking at this aspect, and I'm sure different sports have different weights on them, but knowing swimming as you do, where do you stack rank this in your mind, or at least what are one of the most important things that you see here?
I, John, that is such a hard question. I think they're all really important. If you think about optimal performance, it really is about energy efficiency, mental efficiency, emotional efficiency, physical efficiency, obviously. And so, optimizing, the people who are great at what they do are great energy conservers.
Mhm.
They're great energy utilizers. And so I think they're all really important. I think you can't be a great athlete, or probably even a very good one, without having some understanding of the interweaving of all of these that you're talking about right there, that synergy. I mean, and so I just don't think you can factor any of them out and say this, or factor any of them in and say this is more important than that one. I think they're all a part of the star, or part of the puzzle that comes together to help somebody be at their best. And some people are more naturally great. I remember, Randy Reese used to do lactate testing on his athletes, and there are some people who were just incredible at recovery, and he would be like, "You're not working hard enough." They're like, "I'm working my tail off, but my body is really efficient at lactic acid mobilization, and others not so much." And so I think it's important for you to understand your own body and your own mind, and how these things work together, and where you need to focus your energy in order to be at your best. I do think some people need a little bit more work on the mind, because they might be naturally more negative thinkers. And I think one of the greatest misconceptions in sports psychology is that we're trying to get everybody to be like a Pollyanna positive, and that's really not the case. We really want people to get their thinking to neutral, because when their thinking is neutral, then the part of the brain that knows what it's doing, that prefrontal cortex, that part that knows how to do the dive, how to swim the race, not only from strategy but technique as well, is the part that can engage, because what you don't want to do is throw a whole lot of positivity on negativity, because negativity is usually a function of anxiety, and throwing positive on anxiety doesn't actually resolve the anxiety. It's very important to get people's thinking to neutral. I prefer to give them empowered, flexible thinking, because we think about flexibility as only a physical thing, but it's a very critical thing mentally. When people get anxious, they get rigid psychologically.
So it sounds like the mental aspect is a little bit important.
It is. It's very important, but so is proper fueling, so is proper technique, so is proper strength and conditioning. So
we're gonna come right back to this in just a sec, because we got to know more. This is fantastic, and let's go over here. I'm going to just share one other thing with you. So we want to show this, and we want to show you how our relationship with Megan and all other experts in the swimming world, and what we do, because we do some very different things. Although we are all in working with swimmers, we do it differently. So up here you can see the scientists and the absolute top experts in their field. Megan, you'd be considered in that zone, what we call the top level here, right? Now, fluid mechanics uses that information. What we do is we don't research. We don't do that type of thing. What we do is we take that research, we bring it together, we present it so people can understand. So we're an educational company that helps you understand how to apply, right? But you're in both of these levels, if I'm right. You're not only doing this and really understanding what needs to happen on an expert level, but you're also able to deliver it. And so we're both delivering in different ways. We deliver it to the coaches and to the swimmers. So we will get it on the deck in the hands of people that can actually, work with the swimmers, and we get it directly to the swimmers. So you work with swimmers, we work with swimmers, right? We also work with coaches, you do as well. And we help them understand what they need to do to help their athletes and their programs get better. And so I just want to help understand that we are not on this level with the pink girl, and you are. And so when we listen to you that have this great expertise, we have fantastic programs that are in here that we've utilized other people's information, other thoughts that we've had, but we want to make sure. So when we're talking in here, you had said something so important when we were actually coming into the program. And you said, we were looking at the energy systems down here in this yellow girl of the physical energy. But you started to say, there's also, and we've delved into this on our side, but even more about it, is understanding, the energy system, the emotional energy that charges a swimmer as well. So can you speak to that at all, just to help people understand how important this emotional aspect is in that energy?
Well, it's emotional and mental. Again, I really see these systems as interdependent. And if you want good emotional energy, because that affects your mentality, which affects then your physical capability. And so understanding, I imagine a garden hose, and the garden hose is all shored up, it has no holes in it. You turn it on and then it comes out pretty quick out of the end of the hose, and it's more directed and it's got some power to it. So imagine that same hose with a whole bunch of holes in it along the way, and the water seeps out, and then kind of by the end it kind of dribbles out. Well, think about performance that way. If you're mentally and emotionally, you have a bunch of holes in your hose, then your energy isn't directed off the blocks, in the water, in your underwaters. Imagine underwaters, particularly off the walls. You can have longer and stronger underwaters when you are more mentally and emotionally shored up, because
that is such a clear visual. Wow. So, right, I'd love to animate that. You put the hose out there, right? You got the water coming out, and the swimmers could see it. Like if your girlfriend, you're breaking up with your girlfriend, and you're supposed to be racing, right? Boy, here it comes, or right, or if you feel guilty, or like you haven't done the work you need to, or you let somebody down, there it goes, right?
That's right. And oh my God, the end of the world is coming and everybody's going to be disappointed in me. Like, my experience in 1984, like I say, I felt like I let down my country, I let down my coach, I let down my team, I let down my family, I let down myself. I mean, holy cow, you
Wow,
know.
you carried the weight of the world, literally.
Right. And so, but it's no different if you're in high school or in college and feeling like, I want to do well. I make this distinction between people being disappointed in you and disappointed for you. Because a lot of athletes will go, well, my coach is disappointed in me and my parents are disappointed in me. I go like, time out. Well, first of all, let's really talk about who's disappointed. Is it possible that you're disappointed in yourself and you're just projecting that onto other people, which is usually what the case is? I very rarely have situations where, I'm not saying that parents don't have high expectations, but at the end of the day, what I hear more than anything is I want my kid to be happy and safe. And I just want to have them have the best opportunity to do the best they can. I'm not saying there's not exceptions to that, but in general, I believe that about parents is that they really want what's best for their kid and they feel disappointed for the child, not disappointed in the child, but the child is kind
And
of
if
missing.
they are feeling disappointed in their child, then they may want to take a second look at the way they're communicating and the way they're feeling about that, because that's not what this is about.
Well, absolutely. Again, the things people have control over are attitude and effort. And that's really all you can expect from your kid to go in and give their best effort. And effort is going to be a relative thing on any given day based on some of the things that you just talked about. Maybe they have this hard chemistry test tomorrow or the next day, or they just broke up with a boyfriend or girlfriend, or, things are going to be relative. And you do have to learn how to compartmentalize. If you're going to be excellent at anything, you got to learn how to, again, effectively use that energy, effectively discharge emotionally. I talk about a thing called emotional restrooms, and it's like it's no different that if you had to use the restroom, you would go and use the restroom and discharge the waste and come back, and we continue on with our conversation. Well, you can go to emotional restrooms as well, discharge that heavy experience that's going on right then, or that anxious experience, discharge it, let it go, and then come back. And so they do learn how to. It's not about being robotic, it's not about learning how to be ice lady or ice man. It's about learning. I mean, think about like Jason Lisak's, of course, the very classic
I'll never forget that one.
and like, he's never swam that time again in his life, or probably never did before. But that's all passion. That's all like, turn it on. And so you don't want to turn off emotion. You just want to use it effectively.
You want to channel it so that it's actually working for you instead of against you, or not working at all, right?
Absolutely correct.
That's
And
why
so,
we have a whole program, 3 sessions just on emotion and how to use it, right? And then there's another one on focus and another one on progress, how to make progress. These are so important areas, and I can't wait. Megan, you and I have already talked about this, and our coordinated effort, your visuals, if we can put them and animate them so people can actually see it, it'll even be stronger. But your visuals are so great. It really helps people understand it.
well, I think it's very important that people get the picture, because I think people learn in different ways and people are triggered in different ways. And so there's great pictures. I mean, think about a dolphin coming off swimming. I mean, thinking about underwaters, and I'm like, well, that image of a dolphin, and that's about all that kick and the hip action. And I mean, who does it better than a dolphin? And so if you have that image and you're trying to recreate that image to the best you can in a human body, then that's powerful. Or word.
That'll alter your technique. You'll actually swim differently because of it.
Yeah, and one of the things, particularly with distance athletes, or for sure, I like for people who swim 400 IM. I mean, obviously the kind of classic long events, or long and tiring events. Not that they aren't all tiring, but like 400 IM and 1500 or 1650,
Kind of
depending.
grueling, right?
Yeah,
Long.
grueling. I talk to them about this concept of when they're doing flip turns, that flip turns are turns. Obviously, if you're swimming fly, you're not doing flip turns, but you come off the wall and you think about the wall as a battery pack. And if you think about on your phone, you have the little a symbol for the battery, how much battery charge there is. And every time you hit that wall, you even get 1%, you even get 1% of green. So if you think about that, instead of like thinking about again, I'm getting tired, or this is a long event, or I'm wearing out and my arms are slowing down, is you get that visual of,
Visual targets almost, right? You hit here and you get this.
yeah, you like every time your feet are on the wall, you're gaining 1% of that little battery. And so instead of thinking about going in this race and losing energy, maintaining energy and protect, perhaps even building energy.
So because this is emotional energy, right? It's basically, if I'm right, the way we look at it, it's almost endless, right? What you can put in emotional energy versus physical energy, which tends to wear out. That's the way we see it. So as you go in emotional energy, just my thought is, let's say, and you can tell me if it's right or wrong. If you go in there on the first race, you say, I'm going to get 1% from this turn, right? But then the next one, you're going to go, I'm going to get 2% or 1.5% on this turn. It adds up. Now maybe you have more belief in the ability that you get. Are you getting more energy that way, or you're not?
um we could sit here and argue about percentages. I don't think it matters. I think what matters is the visual of like sticking your feet in and gaining something from
Mhm.
it. Right. And I think I would be careful about saying it's 1% or it's 2% or whatever, because the bottom line is the person has to believe it. It has to be believable on
So it
some
could
level.
get out of control if they're just running it up to, "Oh, I got 100% now."
Right, exactly. I mean, they're gonna go, yeah, like whatever. And I don't think emotional energy or mental energy are unlimited. I think there's capacities in all of these areas, and there's strength, endurance, flexibility, and resilience, and those are all markers of capacity. And so on a daily basis, it's important that we're always in a demand and recovery cycle. We're great at demanding, and sometimes not so smart at recovering. And so that's why I like the expression, work smart, play smart, as compared to work hard, play hard, because that's really hard's not necessarily smart, and hard's not necessarily going to get you anywhere.
What basic message do you have for our younger community members and maybe their parents traveling along their athletic pathways today? What would you give them for some advice, since you've been in so many different levels of the game?
I think the first thing is that it's got to be about the child's goals. When parents assert their own goals and aspirations onto their children, that often doesn't turn out the way that they would prefer it to. I'm not saying it never does, but it's important to stay in touch with what is this about for the kid, because if there's a misalignment of um, expectations and what the sport is about for the child, then that can be problematic in the household. And more often than not, particularly as the child is younger and growing up, if there continues to be this mismatch about what it is for them, they may quit their sport.
Mm.
And
They may wonder, even if you're if their sport and a performance in the sport is more important than they are to you, type of thing, right?
right. And again, that's what I'm saying, is it's really important that it's about what is it for this kid? Because in general, 12 and below, by and large, kids like to get better at things. They like the social aspect. They enjoy the fun of it. If it's not fun and they don't have social opportunities and they don't feel like they're getting better at something, and I don't mean better, dropping time every meet, because we know that that's unrealistic, but just better technique, better, the coach said, hey, you had a great practice today, and yeah, really appreciate your effort, and learning those things about, again, those life skills. So it's the mismatch that I think that becomes problematic. And that's not to say parents aren't allowed to have certain expectations, but they need to be around controllable things.
So if some of our audience, that they got a chance and they see you here and they want to see how they can work with you more, how would they go about connecting with you and doing that?
Well, I don't know if it's appropriate to give out my website, but
Absolutely. You do what you want here. This is great.
well, my website is drmeganneyer.com, drmeganneyer.com. You can email at mneyer at D as in David, R as in Robert, Dr. Megan Neyer, meganneyer.com. Or you can contact me through my phone, 404-931-5253.
And if for any reason you can't, you just send us a message and we'll make sure you get connected to Dr. Megan Neyer. Megan, thank you so much for being here. We're hopefully doing more of these with you and really getting into it farther and understanding really how to help these athletes. Thank you so much.
It would be a pleasure. Thank you so much. Really appreciate being here.